Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing part 1 of my February wrap-up, and I will be talking about the books that I've read in the first 2 weeks of this month. So the first book that I have is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. This is a pretty short little novella that I actually listened to on audiobook, and I think the audiobook is about like 2 to 3 hours long, and I listened to it all in one go. I basically just put it on and was like cleaning and doing a bunch of chores around the house while the audiobook was playing, which is definitely a great way to do your chores. I highly recommend it. So yeah, in this story, John Steinbeck is basically retelling this Mexican folktale of this man who is a diver and finds this, huge giant pearl, and it's about him becoming obsessed with this pearl, about the potential that this pearl will bring to his family, especially for his wife and child, and the fact that like his child will be able to go to school and get an education. But as the story continues, he becomes more and more obsessed with this pearl, and he starts to become suspicious of the people around him, and things just kind of unfold from there. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I mean, I'm a big fan of John Steinbeck's work. Obviously, it's really short and it is like a folktale, so it's kind of obvious where things are going, in my opinion. There wasn't anything in here that was like a huge revelation or a huge surprise or anything like that, but John Steinbeck is just such a strong writer that I will read/listen to anything he's written. So yeah, if you haven't read John Steinbeck yet, highly recommend him as an author. I don't necessarily think this is a good place in terms of like if you haven't read anything by him before, but I think that if you've read like Of Mice and Men before, then you might be slightly more intimidated of like his bigger stuff like East of Eden and Grapes of Wrath. This wouldn't be a horrible place to go in terms of like middle stuff. I think Cannery Row might be slightly better. But anyways, I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really like it. If you haven't read it yet, I think it's worth picking up. Next up, I have Murder on the Red River by Marcy R. Rendon. This is a book I picked up because I saw Amanda Nelson from Book Riot post about this on her Instagram, and she basically said something in her caption about how this was an Own Voices book about a Native American girl who is solving a murder and is an aged out foster kid. And so all of those are things that ring my bells as well. So I picked it up from the library and I really enjoyed this. In this story, you are following this character named Cash. She is about 19 years old and it takes place in about the 1970s in Fargo, North Dakota. So yeah, Cash is someone who has been through the foster system. She's of Native American descent, and so you are exploring just her as a character, the things that she's gone through and the way that it impacts the way she lives her life now. But also you are following this mystery where there is a Native American man who is found dead, and so it's about solving the crime, but it's about like so much more than that. Like to me, the mystery aspect is more the background of this story, and it's really just about this young girl trying to grow up in what's basically like these small farm towns, being a Native American girl, dealing with different prejudices and trying to figure out like who she is and who she wants to be and things like that. So yeah, the story is a bit of a slow burn. It isn't like a page turner, but I really, really enjoyed it. I think that if the synopsis sounds interesting to you at all, you should definitely pick it up. All right, next up, I read a book called Fatal Affair, which is a book very much unlike things I typically read. So for the Read or Dead podcast, Katie recommended doing an episode based around a romantic mystery since we were putting out an episode on the week of Valentine's Day. And so I agreed, even though like I was slightly begrudgingly agreeing to this because I don't really like romance very much, as you guys are aware, but I ended up really kind of liking this one. I picked it up kind of on a whim. There was a post done on Book Riot about romantic mysteries, and so I looked at that post and I looked at the section of the post that was about mysteries with romance as opposed to like romances with mysteries, and this is one that was on there and that my library happened to have available on ebook, so I picked it up and downloaded it, and I ended up like downloading it right before we got hit by a giant blizzard, and so I was working from home and had a bunch more time to read, and I ended up getting like super engrossed in the story. So in this story, you are following this detective named Sam Holland. She has been on leave for a little bit after a case sort of goes wrong, and this is her first case back. She is a detective in Washington, D.C., and so her first case back is the death of a senator. He is found murdered in his house, and so she gets assigned to the case. It turns out that the chief of staff of the senator is a guy that she had a one-night stand with like 6 years ago, and apparently he had like never called her, or she believed that he never called, but then you find out like right towards the beginning that he had actually called, but her friend at the time, Peter, who eventually turns into her ex-husband, Peter, intercepted the message and didn't give it. And so they realized pretty early on that they were both interested in each other, and it was just like missed signals sort of situation. So she's working on this case. It turns out they still have a lot of chemistry, and it's a story about like solving this mystery of who killed the senator while also them figuring out what they're going to do now. This book is kind of ridiculous. Like, I can't recommend it to everyone who likes books that I like because I don't think everyone's going to like it. I think it's partially just I really enjoyed having something really fun and plot centric to read, especially on a snow day. It reminded me a lot of fan fiction that I used to read when I was younger, and I mean that as like a compliment, not as like a slam to this book. It's been a while since I felt so like emotionally involved in a relationship that's basically insta-love. And there are like a lot of problems with the story. Like, I totally recognize that this is such a cheesy book and the storyline is completely cheesy and unrealistic, and there are things that the main character Nick, or the main guy Nick, does that's like really annoying, but there's also some really great stuff. Like, Nick is constantly trying to like save her from all of these different situations, and they acknowledge the fact that that's ridiculous because she's a police officer, so she actually knows what she's doing. So yeah, if you are looking for something sort of light and fluffy and romantic to read, this isn't that bad, and the mystery itself is actually pretty interesting. So yeah, put that one under surprises for 2018. Alright, and the final book that I finished so far this month is Under a Painted Sky by Stacey Lee. This is a book I picked up for the Read a Western task for the Read Harder challenge, and this book was okay for me. It's not a bad one. As someone who doesn't really enjoy Westerns, I was already sort of predisposed to not enjoying this one very much, but when it comes to stories, there are probably worse ones I could have read. You're following this girl named Samantha who lives in Missouri. I think it's like the mid-1800s. Her dad ends up passing away in a fire, and a man basically tries to take advantage of her and her situation, and she ends up killing the man. And since she is this Chinese teen, she freaks out, and this black girl sort of discovers her and decides to help her out. And so it's her and this runaway slave basically on the Oregon Trail. In order to disguise themselves, they decide to pretend that they're boys. They like cut off their hair and dress in baggy clothing basically to pass as boys. And you follow them as they encounter this group of cowboys, and you follow them as they travel along the trail. And it's this whole thing about, will they get caught as being girls, and will they be caught as being these fugitives, basically? So I listened to this one on audiobook, and I think that's part of the reason why I didn't enjoy it quite so much. Sam as a main character is a little bit on the whiny side, or at least that's the way the narrator read her. There are so many situations in here where she was like so dismayed by what was happening around her, and I'm like, girl, you're supposed to be a boy, and you're on the Oregon Trail. Like, what are you expecting to happen? So I found that to be a little bit annoying. There is a love interest for her, and I don't understand why he becomes a love interest, because he's basically like a non-existent character. Like, there's no description to him whatsoever until like the very end. Anime, who is the runaway slave in this situation, is probably the best character in this story, and the main reason why I was able to continue on. She has a really great storyline, and everything with her I found to be completely enjoyable, and I think I would have much preferred a story just about her. So yeah, I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Again, it's not like terrible, but it wasn't that great either. But I also just think Westerns aren't my thing. Also, I forgot to mention other Read Harder tasks I completed. The Pearl, I did the read a book in one sitting task, and then for Fatal Affair, I used that one for read a book with a ugly cover, because man, I hate those covers. So yeah, that's everything that I have read so far this month. I am currently reading Evicted by Matthew Desmond. This will fulfill the task of read a social science book, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm taking my time with this one, mostly because like every chapter breaks my heart a little bit, so I can't read this one in like huge chunks or anything like that. But I am really enjoying this book a whole lot. And then the other book that I am currently reading as of this recording is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. By the time this video goes up, I might already be done with it because I am obsessed with this book. Yeah, there's a very good chance I'm going to just like devour this whole thing in like a day or two. So yeah, I'm maybe like a third of the way in right now, and I'm again just completely loving it. But you will hear all about this one in my next wrap up. Oh, and this one was recently picked for the Oprah Book Club, so this also completes that task, which is very nice. All right, so that's everything I have for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know if you've read any of these books or if you have any questions or anything about any of these books. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.